Welcome everyone to the virtual Loscon. This is the Writers of the Future panel, and I'm going to leave it to the moderator, Joni LaBaqui. Please take over and lead us through this.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to the Zoom version of the Loscon annual Writers and Illustrators of the Future panel. This has become a tradition with this convention, and the people that you see here are usually the people that you're listening to at the panel. And we will be joined by Larry Niven at any moment. All right, so let's get started. So the Writers and Illustrators of the Future, what is that? That is probably the biggest contest in the world for new aspiring writers. We have quite a bit of a history, and we have some people that have right here in this very panel that have been with us since the beginning. Greg Benford was one of our very first judges, one of the first very few judges that we had. And then following right behind him was Tim Powers, who was also part of this panel. How many years, guys? Geez, it's 30, well, it's 37 for you, Greg.
Yes.
So I think 38 or 9 for you, Tim.
Well, I think I started in 85, so 35 years.
Well, actually, you know what? I always consider that you were before that because of the fact that, remember, you taught at
Clarion?
Well, no, you were there in Sag Harbor.
Yes.
Yes. And that was like volume 3, I think. In fact,
Yeah.
Dave Wolverton was the grand prize winner that year.
That's
Remember?
right. Wow.
Dave Wolverton, for those of you who aren't familiar with the contest, is our coordinating judge, has been for several years. He was the grand prize winner, volume 3, New York Times bestseller under 2 different pen names, Dave Wolverton for his sci-fi and David Farland for his fantasy. But the contest was started by L. Ron Hubbard back in 1984 when he said, let's start a contest and help new guys in the field. Let's help launch their careers. I'm going to get my buddies together here, like Frank Herbert and Algis Budrys and Silverberg, and let's start this contest. So Algis Budrys was the first coordinating judge of the contest for many years. I think Algis is the one that contacted you, right, Greg?
Yes, the first year, I think it was me, Algis, Zelazny, and Silverberg.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So that's who it was.
So 2 of us survived.
You're still here and still kicking.
Yes, it's impossible to discourage us.
That's excellent. I like that.
Well, I'm the judge on several different contests, and this is by far the most productive. That does the most good for writers.
Yeah, in fact, that was one of the questions I wanted to pose to you guys. Oh, let's not forget Laura now. So representing the illustrator side of this contest, because literally the volume 6, after we published 6 years of our winners in the annual best-selling anthology, we started the Illustrators of the Future contest, and Laura's husband, Frank Kelly Freas, was our initial coordinating judge. So Laura's been there either on the sideline and shortly thereafter became a judge from the very get-go. So she's also part and parcel to this contest.
32 years and counting.
There we go.
You don't look that old.
I was very young when I started.
All right, so and of course the contest is all about launching careers. We've had, by the way, we've had 13 New York Times bestsellers careers that we've launched, and our most recent one happens to be an illustrator. And let me show you that real quick.
Oh, right.
It was it was Brittany Jackson doing Parker Looks Up, and this was a collaboration with Michelle Obama and this lovely little black girl and her mother.
Wow.
And we actually helped Brittany get this job. We gave her some pointers on how to do her bidding to get the job. She's quite brilliant, actually. Look at this lovely thing. It's about a little girl who saw this particular, she saw this in the Museum of Portraiture in Washington, D.C. And so basically, this is Brittany's work, so she got the job. We helped her get it, and she got it, and it hit the New York Times bestseller list, and there you go.
Excellent.
So that's our latest. Now, Brittany has been to the award ceremony a couple of times since she won. She was grand prize winner, and gee, I think it was volume 24, something like that. And oh, by the way, I brought this just for you, Greg. Remember this?
Oh, yeah.
That's the first volume.
Yeah.
It was. It was, yes. And it sold really well.
It sure did. And we're still selling well. And by the way, for those of you that are going to be entering, this is our most recent cover that hit the, we actually released this even though the bookstores were closed.
Who's the artist?
Mine. Just so you know, everybody, we've been doing a lot of events with bookstores, virtual events with bookstores in the past several months with our winners. Our winners are brilliant this year. They're absolutely adorable, and they do a marvelous job with these Zoom events. Several bookstores across the United States have been working with us to do these, so it's been quite successful.
Oh,
Who was the artist on the one you just showed us?
This is Echo Chernick, our coordinating judge.
Oh, excellent. Good.
She actually did this art. This art was not previously done. It was done for this book cover. Okay.
Excellent.
So it's a beautiful cover. And in fact, we have this incredible plan because of the fact, as you may or may not know, we didn't have our award ceremony this year because 2 weeks before the actual winners were to arrive, we had to cancel everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to release next year's volume, and it's going to have very similar art to this. Echo's doing it again. It's going to be very, very similar so that when they get released together simultaneously, they will look kind of like each other. So that was a bit of our marketing deal on that. And so that's what we're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Now, I would like each one of the judges to express to the audience why you think they should. Here comes Larry. Larry Niven is about to arrive, everyone.
Hi, Larry.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
Good to see you all.
Yeah,
Yes.
nice to
Yeah,
see
good
you,
to see
Larry.
you too.
Welcome, Larry.
Thank you.
Right, and to everyone who's watching, this is Larry Niven. Larry's also been with the contest as one of our premier judges for many, many years. You remember how many, Larry? It's been a lot.
I've been a judge since I think the beginning, maybe a year later.
Well, just a year or two later, yeah.
Yep, that's right. And Larry, I was just about to pose to all the judges here the master question of please tell the audience why you think a person should enter this contest. Laura, we'll start with you.
Okay. Very good.
We're doing Laura.
Yes. Well, the bottom line is that both the writers and the illustrators contest launch careers. You have both illustrators and the writers, you have a week's worth of workshops to learn how to turn your craft into something that actually you can make a living on. What it is that you need to do to get the attention of the publishers, and also the concepts of illustration that is illustrating the story of science fiction, communicating the words of the author rather than some abstract idea of science fiction and fantasy in a painting. So that's the essential difference. If you go further to say, if you show an art director, portraits and Tandor does his thing and everything, they will not be particularly impressed because that does not indicate good storytelling. And that's what every illustration tells a story. So that is what you learn to do in the workshops. And the further perk is that you get to illustrate a story of illustrate one of the winning stories of the upcoming volume. So you have now the advantage of having been published, which again draws you to the attention of art directors. You've been published And the beauty of this contest, unlike other contests, which say, all submissions become the property of the contest, that is not the case. You keep your original, you keep all the production rights, and for doing your job for the first published volume, you are paid the standard rate. So it's your first professional job, you're published, you come to the attention, we give you the skills. It's definitely that which does indeed launch careers.
Great, thanks, Lois.
It's
Larry?
not
Larry,
just, hello?
go ahead, Larry.
Sorry. It's not just a wonderful launching pad, although it is that. It's a teaching experience, a learning experience. You've got Tim Powers lecturing you, and he's good at it. You've got all of us lecturing you, actually.
Yes.
Where else do you get all the well-known professional illustrators and authors in the field to judge the contest? This is a rarity, definitely.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's a good deal for us too. We get stories to read, and we get the best of the stories.
That's great, Larry. I love that. Tim.
Yeah. When Hubbard started the contest, of course, it was designed and still is designed for unpublished people only. Anybody who's already got professional sales is ineligible. And this was useful when he started it because it was hard at that time to be just a person in the slush pile trying to stand out and get recognition among maybe a whole bunch of seasoned longtime professionals. And that's even more important now, I think. I think the field is, I want a better word than crowded, with new writers coming in, each trying to get published, trying to get some recognition. And this contest exists specifically for them, specifically for the newcomer who has not established any track record. And what they get is not simply publication, which right there would be plenty, but as Larry says, they get the workshop. They get not just the people teaching the workshop, but people like Larry and Greg Benford and any number of Nancy Kress, Jack Skillingstead, any number of visiting professionals who also crowd in and give them more advice than they can probably absorb. And so in the space of a week, they come out knowing a whole lot more about the field and publishing and a career, things that it otherwise would probably have taken them years of trial and error, especially error, to acquire. And as Larry said, it's good for us because we get to see the ones who are going to be winning Hugos and Nebulas in years to come in their very first breaking out of the egg. And I love being able to say, oh yeah, I read her stuff. I read her first published story before it was published. So it's a great affair altogether.
Yes.
I do find myself warning these novices that this only happens once.
Right.
Your first story gets all of this publicity, hoopla, the lectures, the editing, and it's only going to happen once. The rest of their careers may not measure up.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
great. Oh, go ahead. Carry on.
Your second story will certainly not be as much of a spectacle as the sale of this first story.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, Greg, how about you?
One thing about reminiscing way back in the early 80s when most of the people who compete in the contest had not been born is that
Right.
at the last Worldcon I attended in San Jose, I asked 3 major editors for major magazines, SF, about the size of their slush pile. And they received in the range of 10 to 20 short stories a day.
Wow.
Yeah. When I started out, the number was typically 1 or 2. If then, and now the right phrase that Tim was reaching for is not crowded, it's mobbed. There are just so many short stories, particularly because it's so easy to submit now. You don't, as we started out by putting them in a manila envelope and mailing them to New York. And the downside of that, by the way, is that the average time to respond to a short story at these magazines is now in the range of half a year. It used to be a week. Remember that, Tim?
Sure. And do you remember having to retype a manuscript when it was rejected if they spilled coffee on the first couple of pages?
Well, I usually was not that neat. But usually, by the way, it was not coffee, it was wine. Particularly with mine somehow. But it was striking talking to these editors about the reality of it. Several of these magazines use 2 or 3 first readers because the real editors don't have time.
Right.
And in the good old days, I remember I sold my first short stories when I was in graduate school at UCSD, doing my PhD in theoretical physics. And as a hobby, I started writing stories, and to my amazement, sold them immediately. But the point is, you would put it in the, typically I'd write them, finish them up on a weekend, put them in the mail Monday. Next Monday, I got a check and a contract from New York. This never happens anymore. And that's why, in a way, I suppose I could say I prefer to think that I nowadays, in my advanced stage, I teach by example, not actually overtly the way Tim does, because I can tell you, the students, a little bit about how hard it used to be, i.e. not hard, it seemed to me, and how tough it is today. So the contest puts you all ahead of that mob.
Right.
Because believe me, I know the editors pay attention to these volumes.
Now,
and look for names.
That's right. Now I want to point something out, actually, because we were kind of analyzing a few years ago about the Writers of the Future winners, and here's an interesting fact. Okay, all right, I just happened to open this book, Greg, the one that I showed you, just to remind you how long you've been with us. Yes. And I was looking at the names here. I'm going to read a few of the names of the winners from that year. You ready for this?
I know.
Nina Kariki Hoffman.
Yes.
All right. The Queen of Short Stories and contest judge. Karen Joy Fowler.
Yes.
Right?
Huge career.
Leonard Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
Dean Wesley Smith.
Yep.
Mary Frances Zambrano. I mean, this is crazy. It's like, this is volume 1. Now, interestingly enough, because of the way the field was at the time, it took about 3 years for these guys to really get going, and then they exploded. Okay, now we're seeing that gap closing a little bit as far as when the winner wins, and then boom, you know what I mean? They're starting to get things happen. It's a very fascinating thing to watch that. Literally, the time span is just getting smaller and smaller from the guy actually getting out there, and that there's a lot of factors, of course, attached to that. But one of the big ones being, of course, there's a lot more people, but there's actually a lot more publishers now too, because you have the online aspect of things. A lot of things are getting published online now, so I find that a fascinating thing. Now, I wanted to also, for you people watching and interested and curious about the contest, we have some news from this year in that we launched a writing workshop, free online writing workshop, of which there are essays from L. Ron Hubbard on how to write. These are some of the essays covered in the annual workshop that the winners get. It also features Orson Scott Card, Tim Powers, and David Farland, and they give little videos on different aspects of how to write a story. And we're proud to announce that right now we have over 4,500 people on this course.
Really?
Yes.
Great.
which is pretty amazing. And seeing how we've actually had absolutely no marketing budget for this, it's all word of mouth. And Michelle wants to say something.
Yeah, I just want to say, give me the link, and everyone, if you're interested in this workshop, the link will be in the description below.
Thank you so much. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
send it to me too, Michelle. I'll put it on Facebook.
There we go.
I have over 5,000 close friends there.
Let's do that. We'll do that. Absolutely. Let's see what else. So actually, that's kind of, from this whole strange circumstance that we all find ourselves in at the moment. A lot of people are writing right now. I got to tell you, we've had highest ever entries ever since. Of course, that's been going on for years, but that did not deter people from writing at all, which I find fascinating. And yeah.
It's hard to get the virus on a laptop. But the contrary is that New York publishing is in terrible shape too.
Yeah.
And that's why the online zines are doing much better.
Yeah.
Because New York publishing is a dumpster fire. It's not just a metaphor.
Right. Larry, you look like you're about to say something.
Nope, I wasn't. I was listening to the silence. The problem is all 6 of us and many more have been on Writers of the Future panels, always saying the same thing all over again.
Yeah.
But the weather has changed. The climate has changed.
The
Look at the
climate
variety of
certainly has.
weather here.
I mean,
And the plague.
yes. Interestingly, print books are down in sales, though not a lot, but ebooks have skyrocketed.
Right.
My
That's
ebook
right.
sales have tripled. It's amazing.
Yep. That's right. And if you don't have a story in ebook form, you are missing out.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Ebooks are so cheap.
Yeah. And they're handy.
You get classics for $1.99 or less.
Yeah.
No, that's absolutely true. And I don't know how long it's going to take New York publishing to recover, but I'll bet it's going to be years.
Yeah, it's really hard to predict pretty much anything right now, except for we can certainly encourage people to be creative and to write or to illustrate, right? And enter this. It's funny. I've actually, I'm in touch with a lot of these contestants, and a lot of them find it very comforting to have a place to go to where they can just, okay, good, I'm going to create something and I'm going to send it and I'm going to get some acknowledgement, and it's not the old, oh my God, we're all going to die and this is all very horrible and it's a horrific situation, blah, blah, blah. I mean, granted, people's lives have changed. However, there's always creation and there's always creating, and that the people on this panel right now, anybody to do with this, I think understands that very well, that creating is such a very important part of anyone's life. And it must be continued and it must be nurtured at all costs.
Yes.
The arts are one of the most important parts of our society.
That's correct. Artists are absolutely vital.
Everyone really wants to be creative, and that's why everybody with a laptop wants to be a writer.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
They are. They are to varying degrees. That is a fact.
And that takes you right back to the challenge of, if everybody with a laptop is out to be a writer, how do you get an audience? How do you, with your story, actually step ahead of all the people at Starbucks looking at their laptops? And
Yes.
And the contest is, I think, the best gateway to the big audience, because I always figure a story doesn't really exist until strangers have read it.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. It's not a story until it's got an audience.
Right. Right.
And the smart writer goes out and expands the audience. I mean, for example, Karen Joy Fowler, right? Won in the first year, right?
Yeah.
Well, she also wrote non-genre, sort of, well, a different genre, the Jane Austen Book Club.
Exactly.
which was a bestseller, and then made into a movie. And it wasn't science fiction; it was romance fiction, actually. But that's a remarkable example of one of our first winners who just took off in all kinds of directions, and is one of the best in the genre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She bought a nice house in Santa Cruz just from that one book.
Uh-huh. I sold mine for $1,500, but I had to throw in British rights.
Ha ha ha. Yeah.
You know, I got 1,500 too, but it was just American.
I got 1,250, and they kept foreign rights. But I didn't care because it was a book published with my name on it. I figured.
Exactly.
And they even spelled it right.
Yeah, I figured I'll be sensible with my second book.
Yeah. No, we all start small and young and stupid. Don't let this happen to you.
Right, exactly.
And win the contest and come to the workshop and find out how you can be really smart with your publications.
Right. I mean, the one thing I think the contest needs more of is editors. I mean, it would be nice to invite them and put them up in a nice suite and everything and get them to stand around and they'd be attacked by writers. Hey, it's LA.
Yeah, as far as starting out young and stupid the way we all did, and taking years to figure out what do you do about that foreign rights clause and all these other clauses, you really do at that week at Writers of the Future, you get so much conflicting and reinforcing and left field information that you almost get to sort of stack up vicarious experience so that when you leave, you're not as young and stupid as we were for so long.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
but it's nice to be young, but not to be stupid.
Right.
Oh, stupid is curable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And eventually it's always young.
Ignorant is curable.
Yes.
Stupid is not really.
Good point.
True.
Good point.
Yeah, good. Let's work on our vocabulary here. No, but it's really true. It's remarkable to see what has happened to this contest through these decades. I just never thought it could this big and good and powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing like it on the rest of the planet. And it's a big planet.
Yeah. That's very true.
Although I'm kind of running out of planet. I've been to everywhere.
You've been everywhere.
Yeah. That's why in the old days, we held it at all these exotic venues. Remember the UN and NASA Houston and all kinds of places. And that's really about it. I mean, it's amazing.
That's right.
Will you let me call you back on the Zoom call? Okay.
All right. So, advice, Laura, advice to people out there.
Do it my way.
I beg your pardon?
Do it my way. I have no trouble selling books. My secret is I've got 55 years of published backlog, well known in the field. Do it my way. It's the only way I actually know to make it that easy.
Well, you were a natural talent. I mean, you sold straight out of the box, right?
No, it took me a year of practicing, and sending stories out and watching them bounce back.
Weren't you getting a degree in mathematics at the time?
I was not then, no.
Oh.
When I started, I was in graduate school with a mathematical class that wasn't working.
Oh.
I just dropped out of economics.
Yeah. I sold my first 4 short stories while I was working on my PhD, which is, after all, another form of fiction.
Yeah, and you sold right off the bat. I did not.
It was amazing. Well, I'd already published 28 issues of a fanzine and learned to write by writing. No editor would see it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, classic fanzine now. I mean, you live this long, you get to be a classic, which is not always a compliment.
Now, Larry, actually, there was something, Larry, that I wanted to have you say again, because I heard you said this once at a convention at Loscon, actually, when somebody in the audience asked you, they said to you, do you recommend that I write a novel first or a short story? And you told them instantly, short story.
Yep.
Yes.
So explain that to these people watching.
You write a dozen short stories, you'll make your mistakes much faster than if you're writing a novel.
Right.
And you have to get that in. You have to know how to write before you really dive into a year's work or 2 years on a novel.
All right. Yeah, it's funny because that was probably about 4 or 5 years ago at our Loscon panel that question was posed and you answered that. I thought that's brilliant. I've never forgotten that. And so I kind of remind people of that too. as they ask me, should I do a novel or should I do a short? And I go, well, Larry Niven always tells people to do a short. So that was great.
Also, there's feedback.
Oh yeah.
Your first dozen short stories get you feedback.
Right.
Much faster than a novel would. A novel usually it's rejected. There's not much commentary.
Yeah. That's my favorite definition of a novel, an extended prose work that has something wrong with it.
And if you have a string of well-received short stories, an agent or editor is going to consider a first novel much more seriously because it's a risk. They think, why should we invest our money in this? And they're reassured if they can think, well, she wrote a dozen short stories successfully, so the odds are better that this novel will be worth getting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Laura, I'm dying to hear what your advice is.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, this is the Illustrators of the Future contest. It's not art contest of the future. And you are getting groomed to make a living as an illustrator. What does an illustrator do that's different from a fine artist? That's an important distinction. I mean, while Joni can tell you how to enter the contest, I can tell you how to win the contest, because as an illustrator, I know what I'm looking for and will give way higher scores to people who demonstrate the ability to illustrate. That is, the fine artist gets his ideas from his head. The illustrator gets his or her ideas from the written word of an author. So this presumes that you read science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and you have ideas in your head how to, number one, communicate what the story is about. Number two, do it in such an evocative fashion that a message flashes in the viewer's eyes immediately. And number three, to raise so much question in the mind of the viewer. You don't answer everything. The only way they're going to answer those questions is to pick up the book or the story and to read it. So what I look for as a judge is illustrative quality. What am I not looking for? A portrait.
Oh, yeah.
I am not looking for a girl gazing at the moon and, I got to make this fantasy. Let's put a unicorn in the moon. I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking for captions. As I mentioned before, Tandor does his thing. That doesn't communicate anything. Both the illustrator and the fine artist, they can paint and draw. We get that. But that's what distinguishes the one from the other. I would give high creds to somebody I know who reads, because that's what you're going to do on the job. Number one, you're going to read manuscripts. I would like it in the 3 pieces that you turn in for your entry. I can tell who's been reading and who's making it up out of their head, who's communicating something and who is just fantasizing. I can always tell. And if you want to get my attention, I suggest get a piece of science fiction. There's lots of digests around. You go to the library, read a story, and think about those elements. What's the story about? What's going to raise questions in the mind of the viewer? Do a lot of thumbnails. Do one idea, do another idea. Then once you've decided that of the 5 little thumbnails that you've come up with in your head, you're going to do this one, and then you render it for the first of your 3 entries. And then go get another story, do it again. I guarantee you, if you do that, I will notice, and you'll get very, very high scores with me.
Excellent. Yeah. I can tell you a little story about that for a fellow I could name, but probably shouldn't, who was teaching illustrators in this genre or in several other genres. He would go find old paperbacks that he likes the cover for. He would tear the cover off. He would give the student the rest of it and keep the cover and say, read this, and then try to design a jacket illustration. And then he compare that with what was on the published.
Yes.
And it was very instructive, he said, on those nobody was as good as what he'd torn off the front.
It's amazing. You know, I at conventions, I do an illustrator's workshop.
Yes.
I give everybody a story to read, and I will teach them the basic concepts of what constitutes an illustration. Give them the story, have them draw up thumbnails, and then turn in something at the end. And then we go over everybody's. What's surprising to me is that among the people who attend there, the elements of the story are very, very similar one to the other. What differs is how they lay them out and how they winnow down what's important and what isn't. That makes a distinction. And then at the very end of the session, I show them my illustration that was published for this story, just to show them what I was thinking about, you know, so they get a chance to compare that to what they were thinking about, give them some more guidance at the very, very end of the workshop.
Yeah, it's a problem most artists have, I've noticed, is that they're introverts and they don't communicate with each other very much, and therefore they don't learn much from each other.
Yeah.
Describing a short story is what we do when we're in conversation with each other.
Yes.
I mean, writers, illustrators, it's harder to find the language to describe a painting.
Yeah, we look at the work of others. We study classic art. I mean, that was illustration of its day.
Of course.
It's telling a story, you know, Jesus on the cross, what the hell happened here? You know, it is tremendously illustrative. You know, you'll have, you know, a whole bunch of people looking up at a holy person and one person in the corner looking away. You know, what was that about? You know, there's always that little element thrown in to get your attention.
Right.
This is how we communicate. We don't really communicate with each other as we admire. We admire and look at the works of others. A lot of times we get inspiration from artists of the previous generation. You notice that a particular illustrator, Vinnie DeFate, for instance, the spotting of blacks is very evocative of film noir. Very effective use of solid blacks to draw attention in an illustration. You know, we notice these things. We very, very seldom talk about it, though.
True, and film noir came from the early work of
because a picture. Pardon me. Because a picture says 1,000 words.
Exactly. Well, there's an interesting point you bring up about classical art, is that we see all the statuary of Greece and Rome, and my own son was one of the who's a professor of classical archaeology at the University of Georgia, was one who discovered that all the great statuary of the ancient world was painted. It was not bare marble, which is a striking revelation. You only discover this if you can look down on a couple of micron scales and see the little flecks of paint that are left in marble. It's an astonishing revelation. Centuries of people in the West thought that was the ideal of classical art, but it wasn't.
Gregory, what's very fundamental to that is that what those marble things were Roman copies of Greek bronze originals, which they melted down.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
They valued what was depicted to the point where they created the marble copies.
Yeah.
Didn't just destroy them.
But the Parthenon was painted. The entire Parthenon. That's striking.
You wonder why they bothered to carve marble if they were just going to paint it. I mean, why didn't they just use wood?
The marble lasts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You guys remind me of the, it just made me think of one of the cool parts of the workshop where we have the illustrator and the writer is seeing his art for the very first time, what the illustrator illustrated for his story.
Yeah.
I just find that it is such an emotional, wonderful experience for both of them. I've seen, well, you guys, you've all been in the room. It's just, it's just magical. Isn't it magical?
Yeah.
It is, because the writer has some ideas, not necessarily pictorial, and you can tell from how they write. There are some authors who have their tremendous cloud in the sky ideas, and then as an illustrator, you can't find a single thing to give any direction of what the thing should look like. They just don't express it. They think it, but they just don't express it.
Exactly.
And then they just don't think in those terms, in pictorial terms. And then when they see it rendered for the first time, it like just brings it to life, brings it to the forefront. It's very exciting for them.
Yeah. My first jacket on my first novel, Deeper Than the Darkness, was painted by Frank Kelly Freas, and it's now used as an example of classic such art. I saw it in an article just last year online, and there was that cover painting because it's the classic starship with a plume exhaust and an alien world, and it was, of course, exceptionally good, and it sold very well.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing that illustration does is marketing.
Yes.
The more attractive box of toothpaste on the shelf, regardless of the price, is the one that they're going to go to first. It has to be exciting. It has to have the colors that can be seen from 50 feet away. Okay.
Right.
And it has to evoke that quality of what? I understand what's going on here, but I have so many. How did this happen? What's going to happen next? It has to have that evocative quality that just brings up so many questions. And that's the essence of it right there. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Kelly helped sell that book a lot. It sold so well. It was later done in hardcover. How does that happen?
Ringworld. It happened with Ringworld.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
7 years before it was a hardcover.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great moment when, as you say, Joni, when the writer is first confronted with the artwork, because you can see it happen in their faces. The story that previously was pretty much in their head only,
right?
It's like a door opened onto another world, and the writers just reel back to see a literalization of their vision. It really is a great moment.
Yeah, it's special. And I've actually heard the writers talking, before they see the art, they're like, oh, am I going to know which one is mine? And
really?
Never
in 1970 at a Worldcon, the first day, a bunch of friends led me to the art show, which wasn't open yet. And they led me there to show me Don Davis's first portrait of a Ringworld.
Yes.
From ground level.
Wow.
Beautiful painting. I own it now.
Oh,
right.
Right. Yeah. And then there was Michael Whalen, who did so much of your work.
Yes.
Yes, he's very good.
Yeah. Realistic.
I own a couple of his too.
Realistic artists are uncommon. And particularly the astronomical artists are uncommon. The only two I can think of offhand are Don Davis and Rick Sternbach. But there are others, of course. But
David Hardy, good astronomical artist.
And, what's her name? Who's up in Northern California? Forgotten. It'll come to mind. But actually, science fiction works very well if you give a realistic dust jacket or cover.
Kelly put bulges, score marks on crafts and bulges in spacesuits and creases in the faces of the heroes.
Right.
That had never been done before. Everything had been idealized, and he put so much realism into it. That's how people, pay attention to it.
Right. Yeah. Adventure does not just occur to the young people.
Yeah.
Of course, with people with lines in their face like us.
Yeah, it's not the years, it's the mileage. Indiana Jones.
It's the road wear, really, but no.
It shows you lived.
Yeah, right. No, it's a very important principle, and realistic art is harder than glossy, fuzzy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is. It's realism and then some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First learn to paint.
You recognize the figures as real people, but there's just so much more to them.
Actually,
Whether it's a slant of an eye to give an expression or something,
yeah,
there's always something more there.
yeah. Tony Weisskopf from Baen Books, who owns and runs Baen Books, said to me she thought the crucial thing that Baen Books had over the New York publishers, the vile, distant New York publishers, because Baen Books is all edited and so forth in the South, was that they use realistic depictions of action scenes, and that really increases sales. And they're one of the companies that has prospered so well in the last few years and expanded their distribution. And the point is, ordinary people, apparently not us, really like realistic paintings.
Yeah.
No, another.
We're at the 5-ish minute time. So Joni, why don't you ask the final question?
Oh, okay. The final question. Good title.
Time to wrap it up, Joni.
All right. So we're actually very excited about any of you who have never entered Writers of the Future or Illustrators of the Future to do so. And the way you do that is you go to www.writersofthefuture.com. And that is actually the same homepage for the illustration contest and the writer contest. Both of them, you can actually get to it via illustratorsofthefuture.com. We own both of those. But the Writers of the Future is the more well-known name. So that is, if you go to that, you'll get onto the contest. You can enter right there. We have a portal that you simply click on, and you start your entry form, and you upload your manuscript. If you're an illustrator, you do the same thing. You click on the Illustrator contest. You fill out the form and upload your 3 pieces of art, and you're all set. And that is also where the workshop is. If you go to www.writersofthefuture.com, right there will be the workshop. You can click on that and just wail away.
Yes.
And no entry fee. No entry fee at all.
None at all.
And you too can perhaps come to the workshops and everything in Hollywood and buy people like us drinks at the reception.
And we're also free to do portfolio reviews. Some of the other art judges, illustrator judges will be on hand during the workshops, and we are free to do portfolio reviews and talk to you about your work and ask for your aspirations, and we'll be around.
And Laura, you know what? You bring up this is so important, and this is something hopefully I think you have actually seen in this panel, and the fact that when you're a winner of this contest or even a contestant of this contest, you have these incredible artists that are talking to you right now.
Yeah.
Writers, illustrators, they are there for you. These are the kind of people that pay it forward, that have a heart, that care, that want to mentor you. And it's funny because a lot of people go, "Oh my God, no! I couldn't approach Larry Niven. Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "Yes, you can."
Let me add parenthetically, Joni, let me interject. That was one of the things that Kelly Freas was really good at, and everybody loved it. That when they showed him a portfolio, there was nothing to be afraid of, because once he figured out what it was you were trying to do, he would teach you how to do it better and faster, show you where you can improve. And so it was always a pleasant experience getting a critique from Kelly Freas.
Yeah, and you know what? These judges are very approachable people. They want to help you. So that's one of the reasons they're judges, because they're that kind of person.
Yeah.
So
We
you
love talking shop.
Yeah, so
We
you
love
joined.
telling stories.
Yeah, that's right.
True.
Wee hours of the morning.
Yes.
Speaking of wee hours of the morning, thank you all for attending this year's virtual Loscon. We're really hoping next year in 2021 we'll be at the LAX Marriott, and you will be able to buy these wonderful people drinks at the hotel bar. Also, if you're enjoying our convention, in the link below, there is the Teespring link. You can get your Loscon merchandise. And big thank you to Susan Fox, who is the executive producer of Krypton Radio, Sci-Fi for your Wi-Fi. She is also this year's tech committee member who's helping host this. Thank you very much to Krypton Radio and Susan Fox.
Yay, Susan.
And
Yay.
Here.